Welcome to Season 2 of Robbie Burns and Friends. This season is all about my brand new book, Digital Organization Tips for Music Teachers, which is first in the Prestissimo series, a series of technology tip books for music educators, published by Oxford University Press. Each episode, I will discuss one chapter of the book with an expert on that subject. For example, on the episode about note-taking, I will chat with a music education specialist who is an expert on note-taking. The goal of the podcast is to offer complementary material, not simply a regurgitation of the content in the chapter being discussed. Think of these as kind of like a B-side of each chapter of the book, or even better yet, a counterpoint, complete with meta-discussion and even an extension of the ideas already in the book into new territory as provided by the experience of the guest. This week's guest is music technology educator, Ableton Live expert, and author, Will Kuhn. When I ran into you last, when we talked about this, was like, I think the Ohio conference in February.
Yeah.
And I told you what I wanted to talk about, and I asked, how do you manage your audio? And you told me you don't. So
That sounds, I was going to say, I wonder what I told him. And it's like, I'd probably say I don't. Yep, that's what I told you.
Yeah.
What do you mean? What do you mean manage my audio?
So, all right. So there's a chapter in the book. Every chapter is about organizing some kind of computer data. And like music educators have lots of different reasons to keep audio files on a computer more than an average person. Like my wife has like this nice clean iTunes library. Everything she ever has been like bought on the iTunes store or ripped on a CD. It's all music. No, there's no jazz or classical music. Everything is like has the right artist name, the right album name in the right spot. She can make nice, neat little workout mixes, go to the gym, and then have a great time. I, on the other hand, have like thousands of jazz and classical recordings that are totally not organized at all in iTunes with correct metadata. I have multiple streaming services that I try, on and off. I've got audio that is like educational. I've got play-along CDs. I've got method book CDs all in my iTunes library. I have recordings of students. I have projects audio project takes and drafts that I'm working on. I just have all this stuff, not to mention using a digital audio workstation produces its own audio and managing that. So the premise that I'm going on is there's got to be a better way to conceptualize where everything goes on a computer.
Man, your iTunes sounds scary, but like classical music doesn't have good metadata. I feel like there's like articles about that. And how most music is organized, like the artist is the person that you care about, but the composers, the people listed with the writing credits, are not the people that you care about. But in classical music, it's opposite. It's like the artist, who cares? You might, if you're like a super symphony nerd, you might care that it's the San Francisco Symphony, but the composer is who you care. It's like, this is Tchaikovsky. Yes, Tchaikovsky, because you don't want to put that in the title, because the title is not Tchaikovsky's symphony. It's symphony number blah blah blah. And then you have like stuff like the K numbers and the BWV numbers or whatever, like for like Bach and Mozart. Like classical music is just always going to be a little messy in those things. I don't know. I see iTunes is like, that's where finished stuff goes. Like stuff that is released to the public in some way. So like the only stuff that I make that goes in my iTunes is like we make the Recording Club album that we make for the students. And we spend a lot of time finishing that and working on it. And that goes in there every year, and it has an album cover, and it looks nice and everything. But like anything that's like in progress or like students turned it in or anything, that all goes somewhere else. So let's see, how do I manage that? So recordings that we do in the studio go, if I'm in a pinch, they just go on the desktop until I get a chance to move them. And then they'll eventually go in Google Drive, because educators have a nice big Google Drive that we can just use as much space as we want. So that hopefully all comes up down to another computer and I don't have file missing errors and stuff like that. Basically anything that's like a project like that, I use Google Drive. If it's like a work in progress, like the EMG set where I've got a few kids on a few different laptops working on it, I've been using that like iCloud desktop sync.
You showed this to me.
Just kind of keep the folders going, and that is like for stuff that's just like not like mission critical yet, but we're still kind of throwing it together. It's better for that.
Just pause on that real quick. So for those who don't know, iCloud Drive will now sync the desktop of all of your Macs together. So you have one school computer that is logged into your iCloud account in your desktop. So basically your students on that computer can just drag stuff.
Here's how it works. So like I don't have iCloud just like hanging out for any old student to walk up to. Okay, like that would be weird, but because iCloud's kind of, you know, personalized, right?
Right.
So, but I have two school laptops that basically I manage as my own almost. You know, they belong to the school, but I'm allowed to manage them. Those two get the desktop sync, and that is very helpful because, you know, I'll have a student say that's working on a DJ set for an upcoming performance, and I'll just say take the laptop home and work on that. And it's kind of cool because like as they're working, I can see the files start popping up on my desktop. Like, oh, there they go. They're at work on that. And then when they come in the next morning and, you know, need a cup of coffee, I can see that they were working until 1 a.m. or something like that. Which is kind of fun. Now, what I've been burned by before, though, is like iCloud Drive is sweet. When you start to run out of hard drive space, it'll purge stuff that it knows it has somewhere. So that's great because you can get by with a smaller hard drive, you know, and they can sell you a SSD instead. The drawback is like let's say your presentations folder was on iCloud Drive, and it got purged because you haven't opened it in 6 months. That's kind of a problem. There's no way to pin a folder to iCloud Drive yet. So stuff like that's mission critical, I have to keep on Google Drive.
Yeah, that's a major flaw in my opinion.
I think it's coming. You know, that's something that obviously would be useful. I think it works great though. Like I haven't had anything get out of sync. I haven't had anything get stuck. Like they're doing a pretty nice job with their cloud services lately. Like that's been a criticism in the past.
Yeah, no, a couple, like 2 or 3 years ago, Apple was like majorly failing with anything cloud. And I gotta say, like every couple of years, I try to go all in on iCloud Drive. And I actually, maybe like 2 or 3 months ago, decided to put most of my stuff that was primarily stored in Dropbox in an iCloud Drive instead. And I have not turned back this most recent trial.
Oh yeah, Dropbox is done. Like, I mean, Google Drive has different uses, but Dropbox was trying to do what iCloud Drive does, and it's basically better now. You can, with the betas that they have now, like the feature in the fall, you can share like a link to anything that's on your drive too, just like you can in Google and Dropbox. So that's taken care of.
I saw that. Can you do a folder yet?
I don't know. I haven't tried. But that works. Photos works really good. I just did the upgrade to the 2 terabytes of storage, you know, so I could put all of our old photos up on there. It's like 60,000 photos.
Yep, I'm there too. I use that
That
Apple
works
Photos.
so well. Like that really works. Like, I mean, it took a long time to upload it, but like they were all on my phone, on my laptop, like they're all accessible. Like, it started scanning all the faces on the new stuff and synchronizing that. Like,
It's great. That's the same thing with iCloud Drive though. Is you can't yet tell it which photos to keep locally on the hard drive. It kind of tries to figure it out.
yeah, that's okay though. Like, you can tell a computer to say keep all of them. So like, I've got my desktop at home, and that one gets all the originals because that gets backed up onto a second hard drive. So like, the one computer has my local copy of everything, no matter which camera I took it with, basically, and that's nice.
Yeah, that's my exact same
So
setup.
so let's talk about management here,
Yeah.
because like audio management, I feel like because the file sizes are smaller, same with photos, is like some of the hard realities are ignored. And in video, we are always right up against the hard reality, which is that there is not enough space for anything. So, like, what I think is interesting is in audio, we often just keep the scraps. We keep everything. Let's say we produced a track with a bunch of raw files. We keep all the raw files and we keep the finished track. I feel like with video, unless you're like an operation, and you're really like an enterprise or something that does video, you have to chuck the raw files eventually. You get in Final Cut, somewhere like that. You make an event, import all your raw footage, make your episode or whatever it is you're trying to make. You export that, you share it, you keep the thing you exported, but eventually you got to get rid of those raw videos. If you're building up videos every day, and that is where I think it's interesting to consider, do you need to keep the scraps or not? Like with some of our recording projects, I like to be able to go back years later and open them up and see what I did. I never want to do that with video projects, though.
Yeah, I'm
video
with you.
projects, it's like, because the files probably got moved, and it's just a pain in the ass, and it's like, why do you want to do that anyway? Like there's not benefit to that. So like, I don't know. I think that's interesting about working with video, because I work with a lot of video with my students too, and the way that we handle video and audio is pretty different. Even with the students that are doing both, they just they just know from how I set up the workflows that video is more ephemeral of a source format than audio. Audio, you can just keep it forever almost. It's like the file sizes are an issue, and I don't know if that's going to get any better. I feel like with the cloud, most people don't need that much storage. So either you've got like a huge enterprise style storage solution and everything's on servers, or you keep everything in the cloud and basically don't do that much with media. But like the in between is like not there anymore. Like, you can't just get a laptop that has like a mother big hard drive. They just don't make them.
Yeah, I know it's not the direction things are going for people like us. It's interesting you bring up the distinction. There's actually going to be a video and photo combined episode. That's the next one I'm recording, and it's going to be with an old student of mine who kind of pivoted from percussion to video. And I'm curious what he's going to say, because I know he's editing a lot of things on his MacBook, and I have a feeling he's going to come to that same conclusion. And it makes me a little sad. I have this little pipe dream that one day I'll be able to have like iMovie or Final Cut on my iPad and just have all that raw footage, or at least some sort of snapshot of the stuff I need in the cloud, so I can just like kind of take my iPad in my bag, go to the coffee shop, and work with my Final Cut projects. But I don't think that's coming anytime soon.
Oh no, it's not, because the network's not fast enough. Like that's the other thing. Like when I'm explaining, a Final Cut to my students for the first time, when they get in global media, I'm like, okay, it's just like an audio program, except Final Cut assumes that you're going to throw most of your source material away. Like, for instance, if I record a rock band in Ableton or Logic, they're going to record a 5-minute song or something, and the finished product's going to be around 5 minutes. But like in Final Cut, I might record 25 minutes of an interview and use 1 minute of it. I'm assuming I'm going to throw away most of it. And that's, you know, that's like you treat that stuff totally different. I mean, you're going to edit 6 hours of a wedding down into a 3-minute highlight reel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And most of that source material just gets chucked and never looked at again because. So, you know, I just think that's interesting. You know, I actually, like, on the trip I was just on, I used my phone sometimes to do some editing from the GoPro footage I was getting, because, like, I think it was like I was running the beta of High Sierra on my laptop and it didn't like my SD card reader. So, like, I was using the Wi-Fi transfer to get the videos off of it for a little bit. And iMovie, okay, I've got a 128 gig iPhone, so there's plenty of space on it to do stuff. And iMovie worked really well on it. Like, I was kind of impressed. I did a couple rough cuts, but it's like, I found, it's like I wanted to get it to Final Cut to finish it. That's what I was always needing at the end, to like get that last edit the right frame, you know, like exactly cut with the music or something. And there's, like, you know, with GarageBand on the phone, you can move the projects to GarageBand on the Mac. There's no way to do that with iMovie. It's just like, it's just going to be a rough video. So, like, I actually used iMovie on the phone to, like, test out my idea for how I wanted to edit it. And then I would just go to the Mac later and re-edit it the way I liked it.
That makes sense, though. I think that's how they expect people to be using it.
I don't think they expect people to use it for anything super heavy duty.
Right.
And that's a shame, because, you know, some of these iPads are super powerful, but I could picture, it was like the first time I could picture, boy, if I had a big phone or a big iPad that, like, you know, could do all the functions, it might have been less of a pain to use the iPad. And that's probably the first time I felt that way, because usually it's like the iPad. There was like a good article the other day where it's like, you know, for people who, you know, people that say that you can't do this on an iPad, you know, most of the people that are happy with their iPad wouldn't have been able to do that on the computer anyway. You know.
Yeah, let me ask you this. So we're predicting the future of video editing on mobile. What do you think with audio, like digital audio workstations? When I open up my iPad Pro, I'm getting to the point now where I'm running into this frustration, because I know that there's no, I understand that there are a lot of design work that needs to be rethought for something like Logic Pro to be ported onto the iPad, because it wouldn't be a port. It would have to be redesigned completely for touch. But there's no reason at this point, other than maybe this exact topic, managing the audio files, there's no reason why Logic Pro couldn't run on an iPad Pro.
Well, is there a reason to have Logic running on an iPad Pro is the first thing.
Yeah,
like, it's like the Xcode thing. You know, that's what they always keep predicting, is Xcode's going to be on the iPad, and then you can code your apps right on it. And I think that might be coming. I think the iPad's still trying to figure out exactly where the line is. Like, and they're blurring it. They're trying to say, okay, we're professionals. Here's a lot of professional-y kind of features that, you know, artists and things might like. But the apps are different, you know, and some of the apps might do the one thing really well. They might do it better than the big app would. But at the same time, it's not like we are going to be able to make something that's really complicated on a touch screen. Like, because it's like it's all about like the precision of using an indirect pointer, basically. Like you can cram all kinds of functions onto every spot.
But you can be more precise in some instances with touch. Like I feel like if I'm a good example, like if I'm drawing, if I'm doing an automation to an audio track, and I want to do draw a very specific line to my volume, like I want to do a fade out, and I have a very particular shape I want to fade out a track. Like that's something that would be amazing with an Apple Pencil and a touch screen.
But at some point, it's like the truth is that it's a computer, right? Like at some point, it's like 1 pixel. Just move it 1 pixel. Nudge it to the left, and then you start needing something like a keyboard to nudge the thing to the left.
Yeah.
Or something where it's like binary. I pressed the button and made the thing happen. Like that's where it's the same with programming. It's like you can get abstract from the binary to a certain point, but it's still going to look like gibberish from a human perspective. And it's like we're trying to, like, all of us, programmers and artists and media people, we're all trying to like get the computer to do something. We're all trying to get it to make something. And I've always had more success with the tools that are like very honest about what they are. And I haven't had as much success with the ones that try to emulate something physical. Like I did not have much success at all with Reason when I tried to use it, because I just didn't get it. I was like, I'm on a computer, but it's like making me use some other machine inside the computer that it's drawing on the screen. But like, what's actually happening here? And I think I had a lot of success with Ableton because it's like, oh, this is what's happening here. It's a square and you click it. That's all it needs to show me to know that this turns it on. Like that's where I think it's like a philosophy thing. Like a lot of the touch apps were forced to try to play around more with like, let's just make it honest and this is a computer screen, back when they like redesigned the whole thing. And
yeah.
I don't know, like the iMovie I feel like works really well on mobile. GarageBand, I'm not into it anymore, and I used to be. So like I really don't know. It's like it's so hard, like when you look at something like the iPad and how much it can do, for buy an expensive iPad, $1,000 iPad. It's so fast, it can do everything. Versus like Teenage Engineering OP1.
Yeah.
Synthesizer that does a lot of stuff, but it does it in this one quirky way. And I feel more creative on something like the OP1 than on the iPad, because there's something about it being its own thing too. Like that's where it's like with Final Cut or Ableton, I'm like, this is a computer and I'm running a heavy computer app, and this is like a heavy app and I'm running it, and I can do everything I can imagine. It's either going to do it or it's going to crash the machine, but I'm not going to hit some kind of wall where like, on iMovie, my finger can't select the exact frame that I'm trying to select or something like that. Like that kind of stuff like gets me. That's the wall for me, is like there's always some kind of precision where I can't define it precisely enough on the phone. But yeah, with audio, man, the Files app's there finally.
Oh, for sure. So I was going to say, so I think if I synthesize what you're saying, one of the major issues is precision and specifically audio, with as far as touch interface in a digital audio workstation goes. But the other thing I would say that's really not ready is, something like Xcode and something like Final Cut, they really just need to work with files in a way different.
Yeah, files are there. Whether we say they're not there or not, they're always there. They're probably always going to be there, because the computer has to point to something to make the thing happen. So, yeah, people were clamoring for like an audio equivalent of photos for a while. And files will probably do the trick, as long as I can like airdrop to that and I haven't tried that yet, but like if I can airdrop from a Mac into files, I'm good, because like there's so many times that like this is the thing that gets me is like it's always like around graduation, some kid's gonna sing like an edited cut of something for one of the ceremonies, and they edited it on Ableton. They're like, I just need to get this on my phone. How do I get it into music? And it's like, yeah, it's like music's not just any music. Music's got to be like music that's their music almost. You know, it's basically like a streaming app now. And it's a pain in the butt to like stick it on your iTunes at home. Most people have never synced their phone to their computer anyway. And like, okay, so AirDrop, where does it go? Voice memos?
Yeah.
That's where it goes right now. It's like, that's okay, so you're going to have to keep the screen alive. Because voice memos isn't going to play. Oh man, yeah. So if they can just like drop it into files and like let the audio player work with the screen off, that would be great.
Have you played with that Files app? It sounds like you're running the iOS 11 beta on a couple.
I'm running the betas of everything. The files, I haven't played around much with it because a lot of it's like there and it works, but a lot of the share sheets aren't updated yet. So like the little thing that lets you send it to there isn't coded yet.
So something like Files, I think what's going to make it sweet is when third parties can, nest inside of that view, because eventually Dropbox is going to become a first-class citizen in the Files app, just like it is on a desktop computer.
Maybe. I mean, that's all like when I pictured Dropbox running in the little always running area next to the clock on a Mac, I don't know. I don't know if they'd let that, sync all the time in the background.
I don't know if it would sync when the Files app isn't open, but there's definitely an API where developers can basically allow you to. It's like when you're in the Finder on a Mac and you see Dropbox and Google Drive in the list of stuff on the left column. It's going to be able to work its way into that.
There, yeah.
And it's going to look native. It's not going to look like the Dropbox app. It's going to look the same as when you're browsing an iCloud file.
Yeah, like to load something, that could be nice.
What kind of gets me though is you can't. It doesn't look like you're going to be able to use the the Files app as a launcher. It looks like it's fulfilling the browse, drag, share functions, but you can't. At least now, you can't tap on a file in your iCloud drive and have it open in the actual app. It just shows you a preview.
Yeah, I haven't played around with it that much, so it'll be interesting to see what people do with that. It's just nice that you can like get to it now. Just in general, like if that's a destination you can save stuff to, that'll be a big deal, I think. Just for a lot of people that's just a hang up, that you can't see that stuff.
So do you think it's really going to change the way that audio and video apps work on an iPad?
Ooh, that remains to be seen. I mean, it would be nice. I mean, okay, my test. Here's my test. Okay, is like, here's a really common thing to do is rip a song off of YouTube and throw it in a video editing app. That's a really common thing that you'll do sometimes. Can I do it on an iPad? No, I can't do it on an iPad. It's like simple. Send it to a downloads folder, drag it in the other app. Until you can do that, I don't see switching. You know what I mean? Like that's a simple file operation that should be possible.
Which part of that process are you running into an issue with? Because I've done that before. It's not pretty, but
yeah. Where do you drop it? Like where do you save it to?
So I use a workflow with the workflow app that is super complex. Someone else wrote it, but it will take a really long time. But it will actually turn a YouTube file into a video file that will run in the QuickTime player, and then you can just hit the share sheet and put it in your photo roll.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a workaround,
Well, the fact that the photo app is used almost like a file app and has been for years on an iOS device.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the honesty thing, it's like that's not how they want you to use it. And it's not like they made it so that's supposed to be a thing that you can adapt to. Like, that's obviously not the way that was designed to be used. You know what I mean? Like when I start to run into stuff like that, I start running the other way. Like what made me leave GarageBand was what was it? They took away something. It's like they took some feature out, and I was like, that's going to be a pain in the butt. So either I can like rewrite some lessons to work around that. Oh, I know what it is. They took out plugins at one point. They like redid that thing at the bottom that has the effects and made it so you could not load external plugins for a while. And I was like, okay, so my option is run old GarageBand, which, what's the point if I can't, some people disagree with me on this, but it's like if I'm not inspired by the newest version of it, I'm probably not going to want to use it,
Yeah.
And the other option was like, okay, let's just let's not use it anymore. Let's just transition away from it because this is, not going to work anymore. And that's, to me, it's like, yeah, I could work around that somehow. There could be all kinds of other things I could do instead, but like, I don't know. Like, I try to avoid workarounds. Like I like to work directly. The one exception is the GarageBand loop library running in Ableton.
Ha.
I think that's the only big exception workflow, and I only had to do that once.
Well, let's talk about that. So, like, this is another facet of it, because, like, and this is why I asked if you think that the Files app will change audio on the iPad. One of the things that a real professional audio workstation does on a computer is, like, something like Logic or Ableton is going to have a library of audio samples, which are living somewhere on your computer's hard drive as actual audio and WAV files that are exposed to the user. But when you're in the app, it's all built into a nice clean interface, sort of disguising that. What are you doing with that? Let's use Ableton as an example for like all desktop digital audio workstations. Like, are you doing anything specific to manage your samples?
Well, to get the GarageBand loop library to work in there, that was a big process because those aren't WAV files anymore. Those are some new thing called Core Audio format, and nothing reads that except for QuickTime, basically. And I had to run them all through Audacity, which does read it. But Audacity reads it with like an extra 20 milliseconds at the end or something like that. Just a blank. So they didn't loop exactly right if I just converted them. So I had to convert them to waves, chop off the last X number of milliseconds, and then I had to go through and name them with the BPM and key signature data that is not a feature in Live to be able to filter by that. So I built in the tags so I can filter them down by key if I need to.
Yeah, I know. I've heard you.
It was crazy, but like, yeah, basically like Live works a lot like something like Final Cut would, where it leaves the external file in place. It assumes that, whatever your finished product is going to live somewhere other than your project. And you get the same issues with that. That's like one philosophy of writing a media app. A lot of apps work that way. All the Adobe stuff works that way. And, typically with those, you get like really good finished products, but like, eventually those files will come unlinked because you renamed the hard drive or something like that. And that can be a pain to work with. But that seems to be how almost all the professional apps manage external files, by just not moving them, leaving them wherever they are, because there's some, probably a large percentage of professionals out there that are using some kind of enterprise storage that it's referencing off of a server anyway. So, you look at like, you look at something like the iPad Pro. Would I what I wonder about is, they had some demo reel of like people at Pixar saying how great it was. And I'm thinking like how does that fit into their workflow? Because their workflow is almost all server based. So, what are they using that's allowing them to work on actual Pixar stuff on this? Or are they just like saying it's nice? You know what I mean? Like, is it like potential that they're talking about, or is it like they're actually using it on finished productions? Because that would be kind of hard, I feel like, to integrate an iPad into something where almost always is using a wired network and stuff like that, because it needs to be extra speedy.
Yeah, I'd say there's no way they're using it for more than character sketches.
Yeah.
Which, again, being honest about what a tablet can do, that's something it can do well.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the stuff they've done with like the high res display and the high frame rate, stuff like that, that's all the direction that should go. I mean, the auto white balancing and stuff like that, like that's good stuff. That's really good stuff. I feel like the back end stuff almost needs worked on a little bit. Like on a Mac, it's really easy to connect to an external server that has a bunch of files on it and reference it. Now
I noticed
attached to that drive,
Yeah, you're on the beta. I noticed in the because I'm on the public beta on my 2 iOS devices. I haven't taken the plunge on Mac yet. If you go into the Files app in the newest public beta, there is an option as one of the like location. It's like Dropbox, Google Drive, iCloud. There's an option to turn on an OS X server as a possible file repository.
Huh. That's cool.
Which I thought was very surprising.
Yeah, that could be something. I did not notice that.
I'm tapping on it right now, though. It shows like a document picker on the screen, and then it immediately crashes and then goes off the screen.
Yeah, that could be a big deal. I mean, we still have, even when our school went to all Google, I told Tech, please just like leave that file server running, even if nobody's going to use it, just because sometimes if I have a big giant file to move, that's the easiest way to move it from upstairs to downstairs is just get on the app share drive and just throw it up that way. Like, it'd take forever to do it on a flash drive or something,
Yeah.
So that could be big news. Yeah, that could be big. Haven't played around with that yet. And, OS X server, I mean, let's see it connect to like a regular kind of server drive. That would be also nice.
Yeah.
So I've never, outside of ones that I've run, I don't ever see the OS X servers. I see the SMB kind of servers, where that's what the address starts with instead of AFP or whatever the Apple one is.
Yeah. So let me come back to your Logic samples again for a second. The way that you rip those, do you interact with them in Ableton the same way you would in Logic? Like you import it and then it automatically can conform to the tempo of your project, or the other way around?
Yeah. The loops, you mean?
Yeah.
Basically, as long as the loop, it's, I don't know exactly what makes it, exact. I think if it's close enough to being something that appears to be a 4-bar loop, it will just call it that and just be that. It'll just, you just drag it in. Basically, I use that little file thing on the left in Live where you can put a folder there, and just have a folder called loops, and it's all in the different categories that you'd find in GarageBand, and you just dig through there. The tags I put on them, because Live doesn't have a global key, which get back to that in a second. But you know, I put like, you know, for something that's like in A flat minor, I put like, I think ABM dot G sharp M or something, you know, like, so it's got the enharmonic name of something like that. Or just like if it's G minor, just GM. If it's G major, just G. And then that way you can like type in the little box and filter by all your C minor or whatever. And the other thing I did is like for drum beats, I just made sure anything that was a drum or percussion had the word beat in it. So you can just type the word beat and it'll put all you'll see is drums. So that's, you know, when you drag them in, they work like normal. It warps them. So, you know, that's Ableton's things. It warps everything when you drag it in. So these, it typically warped them as the correct kind of loop. So I don't think there were any that I had to like fix the timing of. There's a couple where Apple's like metadata was wrong and had the wrong key. But, you know, that's, you know.
Yep.
You know what I thought was interesting is that Ableton tweeted out a survey on Twitter. Do you use mobile devices for making music? And that's unusual for them to do anything like that.
I saw that.
To have a survey of any kind. I thought that was really interesting, especially in light of that website they made for learning music that basically functioned as a web version of Live. Like that was way deeper than it needed to be for a website like that.
Does that website run on a mobile device?
Yeah, it does. It's all HTML5 basically. It's pretty fancy, and there's all kinds of good stuff going on that like the different audio blobs in there like sync with each other, and like there's like a master play switch. Like this is obviously more than just this website. Like they would have had to work a long time on making that work. And it works really well. So I thought the two of those combined looked interesting to me. Who knows if they would do something like a iOS app, but who knows? It would be pretty. Some of the, you know, they're definitely interested in that world, though, which is a first.
On the one hand, I can see how the people who are attracted to Ableton might be more likely to want a mobile version, but on the other hand, Ableton's got a lot of really tiny buttons.
Well, you know what I could see? Like here's an example of like where the story starts to make sense for me. With the electronic music group this year, we had two laptops running, and one had like the master set on it with all the backing tracks and the tempo changes and everything like in it. You know, it's running audio off of it, you know, for the whole set kind of. And I had another laptop and I was using Link, and all that laptop was doing was push tracks. So it was like a synchronized drum machine. That's all it was. I could see some sort of companion type app to, you know, make it so the push could stand alone a little easier. You know, I could see that. You know, make something where, you know, maybe plug your push into it and it'll do all the sounds.
Yeah.
You know, something like that. Because, like, you know, the push, too, especially, is like a stone's throw away from being something like the OP1 where it has all the sounds on it. I did a little workshop for my wife's Girl Scout troop where they came in the lab and played on the pushes, and we did some drum beats and stuff like that. And the way I ran it for that age is I just turned all the screens off and let them think the sounds were coming out of the push, and nobody questioned that, you know, because it's, why wouldn't it be, you know?
Yeah.
I could see that coming. I mean, I don't see why it couldn't. I mean, you can basically use the push on its own without looking at the laptop. So like, you know, some kind of a companion, here's the sound module, plug it into your phone, and here's the sound. that would work just fine, wouldn't it? You know, I'm just throwing ideas out. I have no idea what they're up to.
Yeah. You don't have inside info?
I don't have inside info. The only time I ever had inside info was the push trade-in. I knew about that a year beforehand, but that was because I was the guinea pig.
Yeah.
That was the time they said hop on a plane to LA. We can't tell you what it's about. But no, they know, you know, who they can talk to and who they can't. I mean, most of the people that are outside of Ableton that they deal with are some kind of dealer of Ableton stuff. Like a lot of guys who, you know, will use their products and work for some other company or have their own like startup that does educational stuff or something. Those guys are technically like dealers with them. So it's almost like they treat them as like a not paid advertising a little bit.
Interesting. So yeah, coming back to this, like where is the mobile stuff going? And you were talking at length about why you're not crazy about the mobile version of GarageBand. Did you know that there's now a feature where you can sync a Logic project to GarageBand?
No, I didn't know about that. I knew they had done some more integration. I haven't like opened it up in a long time, to be honest. I saw the fake live loops thing, and I was like, that's cute, I guess. And there's no edit button. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, pretty much.
that was kind of where that went. Like, I don't know.
I did a little blog post on this feature when it launched. Spoiler alert, it's not great.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much what's happening. And this is for me, I'm always thinking about like how to be best organized about this stuff. That's the whole reason this is the topic of this episode. For me, the very first starting point was just to think, okay, how direct can this possibly be? Because ideally, I can be working with a file and throw the project file into iCloud Drive and then just open it on an iPad in the GarageBand app. And that is by no means how it works. Like, first of all, the Mac still has 3 separate places that it will by default store a GarageBand project in. There is that GarageBand folder within your music folder.
Right.
And then iCloud Drive has not only a Mac GarageBand container folder, but an iOS GarageBand container folder. And none of them can talk to each other. So in the process of getting a Logic file from my computer to a GarageBand file on my iPad, I at one point had a duplicate copy in each one of those folders just to get this to work.
Man.
And then the most frustrating part is that it bounces out. Like the audio tracks don't, I think it like just kind of condenses them all into one audio track and you can't edit it at all. It's just there for reference. So they're very much, I mean, that very much supports your idea that really the precision of audio editing is not, that's the thing that's holding the whole thing back.
Yeah.
Because like noodling on a piano sound into a MIDI track that's not awful on a touch screen.
Yeah, I feel like the people who are really into like audio stuff on iOS are the same kind of people that are really into like Korg Volcas and stuff like that, where it's like, just give me a little gadget to fiddle around with and I'll integrate it into a larger piece.
Right.
Like I feel like hardly anybody is like, this is my main thing, is this iPad and nothing else. Like, it's rare to see that. Like that one kid who was producing beats for that one guy was, you know, had the feature about him that was viral for a couple of days. Like, that was unique because he was just using his phone and was like, oh, all right, well, I mean, you can, so, you know, you might as well. Some people are going to find ways to do that, but, you know, it's kind of like the thing with professional media stuff is like, you know, it's like creeps in, you know, because people grow up with a phone or they grow up with an iPad, but at some point you're like, okay, show me how to really do this, and then, you know, some of that will hand off. Like all the cameras have touch screens now because everybody needs a touch screen, but a lot of people will still upgrade to a Canon, SLR, from their phone if they are really into photography. It's like there's always going to be like the DSLR of whatever it is you're doing. There's some interface that you used for your iPad, you're going to hit the ceiling on it eventually, and it's like, okay, I need 128 channels, and need a giant Hollywood style mixing board. So it's, I think that the definition of pro has changed a lot too. I think that like a lot of people that would have needed professional stuff before maybe don't to get the results they need. So I feel like the professional stuff is going higher end. There's not really like prosumer is really not as much of a thing as it used to be.
You think so?
I think so. I mean, in the kind of stuff that I've been buying, it's like I feel like to get the results I want, I feel like it diverged a lot more over the last few years. Like I fiddled around with like running things through an iPad, and like that market didn't go anywhere. Like the interfaces are like basically the same still, where like on the kind of stuff that you can buy to interface with a computer has gotten a lot better, but like the iRig is still a thing on the iPad.
No,
like,
I know.
Like at one point they were trying to do those like Alesis IO dock things, and like that was promising. And it's like I got one. It's like, oh, none of the apps use it, and it's basically like a thing to make me feel like a professional. But like this isn't how anybody real does it, and the quality of this stuff is, equivalent to maybe the low end pro model. It's just like it's just like with cameras. Look at the point and shoot market's dead, but like skip that. Look at like Canon, for instance. The Rebel line used to be really big. That used to be a camera that was considered desirable. Any of the Rebel ones, which is like below the 6D, the 60D, the professional models, something like the 650D, and that's like a Rebel. And it was, or like the Rebel T4i or something, those are like decent cameras that have some of the same sensors, but a more plasticky body and a cheaper price. And, it's for prosumers or whatever. But that stuff has totally stagnated now. The Rebels are a joke. You need to get a 60D or better to get the new stuff now.
Yeah, I guess I'm not that up on that industry to know this. So I guess I would just ask, do you feel like your needs have deepened as you have grown professionally? Or because I feel like there's still a whole lot of products that are trying to feed that market. I mean, iRig is a great example of someone trying to convince you, oh, no, iOS is a real place you can make music, and people like us are like, yeah, whatever. But I mean, to me, another great example, speaking of photos, is the Apple Photos app. Like that is, like they discontinued and Aperture, which was the app they discontinued, I considered it prosumer, but actually a lot of professional photographers like relied on that software to do it, and they've condensed it into Photos. I feel like Photos is a real prosumer option. Like it's got enough editing tools that you can go beyond.
What's below it though? Like there's nothing below it. Like that's what I mean. It's like there's no prosumer middle anymore. It's like Photos is the thing that it comes with. Like that's the free default photo manager. Like you can't say that that's prosumer. It has advanced features that most people won't use, like other things that are default have had. I think a lot of people that have an iPhone have never swiped past photo and video on the camera. They don't even know that it can do filters right there, that kind of stuff. Like, but that's still like, that's consumer level. That's basic. That's your basic camera now is the phone. And that camera is so much better than what your basic cameras used to be. Like, it's like we crossed this point where it's like the basic option is good enough for most people on a lot of media stuff. So you see, like, I keep comparing this to photography for some reason, but like professional photographers, like are less in demand, at least at the casual level. Like you have to charge high prices to be deemed worthy enough to be a photographer, because they're only going to hire you for the best event, like a wedding or something, because everybody's phones do a decent enough job, and that's how it is for most people. So it's like I feel like, with my program, I realized early on I was about 5 years ahead of everybody else, where we were having this program that had not been able to take off in other places, and it was taking off. And I was like, all right, how do I maintain this lead and this, where other people are catching up? It's like, well, we need to do professional stuff then. We need to really up the game. It's not going to be good enough to just stick on GarageBand anymore. It's not going to be good enough to bring your own headphones anymore. We're going to have professional, legit stuff, and I think you're right that, like, as I've grown professionally, I think I've gotten pickier, and, like some of my external mics that we use at our lab stations were starting to go. And I had those like M Audio producer mics, those little $75 things. And I was like, well, I could buy another batch of something that price, or I could like slowly upgrade the lab to something real nice. And so I started doing that. I was buying those like Rode NT USB mics that are like basically like an NT1 with a USB on the other side. And it's like, cause it's like, I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to have these for years. I want everything to sound real good. I think that is something that goes with it. It's like what I'm saying, though, with any professional. I think as you get good at your craft and you start to hit the ceiling on your gear, that's when you start realizing that you need more professional gear. You start making videos and you're like, mine don't look as good as the YouTube video that I saw. Let me try to emulate and mimic and learn camera tricks and stuff. And you do it and you're like, it's pretty close, but now I see why I need a 4K camera, or now I see why I need, a gimbal for my camera to keep it steady and stuff like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and maybe the story of the GarageBands and the Photos apps is that simply we have to look at them as not prosumer, but I think that in the case of Apple, that they have been elevating them to the point where they really are pretty good for what they are. Like if we position them in our mind as not even at the level of a prosumer product, then they do actually quite a bit for what they are.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, it's like they're good enough. It's like at one point they realized it with the iPhones that they didn't need to make a new one every year to be good enough for the entry-level model. They just sold last year's iPhone, and that was good enough for most people. I think it was like around the 4S or something they started doing that, and it was like, yeah, that one's good enough for a lot of people, and for 3 years it'll be good enough, and then we'll keep trickling them down. I since that, I don't think I've been on the newest one. I've always been a couple of generations behind because it's good enough. Good enough is good enough for most people.
Well,
good enough gets better every year.
Yeah, I know it does. It does. And when Aperture, just to continue to talk about audio, but
you were not happy that they discontinued that, were you?
No, I wasn't really happy. But what's funny is I really have considered and played around with Lightroom on at least 3 occasions since Aperture was discontinued, and I just don't need it. Like the Photos app is fine. I'm missing a couple of features, but not.
My wife can't do without Lightroom. She is a hardcore Lightroom fan, and she cannot live without it.
I think the major friction point is not in the editing as much as it is in the organizing. Like Aperture really had a brilliant workflow for working with photos. And the only time I run into a problem is if I take the DSLR on vacation and I shoot, because I shoot way more photos than I know I'm actually going to need when I have that with me, because it's fast and you get one good shot for every 100. And what I would do in Aperture is I had this really nice workflow of quickly sifting through all the garbage. And I've kind of lost that with photos. But when I really dig in and scrutinize my photo library, I realize, I don't actually have so many photos that I need to have like 1 through 5 star ratings
No.
to understand what's garbage. Like if it's not great, I delete it, and if it's better than average, I favorite it, and that's fine.
Yeah, I mean that's what we started doing is like she'll take 1,000,000 pictures on her camera and edit them in Lightroom, and she'll find, she'll pick out the best ones. Those ones are the ones that get exported to send to Shutterfly to get prints for the calendar or something, and then they'll go into Photos.
So literally the same exact
So like
way
the best stuff goes into Photos because that's the stuff that's like I say that's what's considered canon. Is
right.
the stuff in Photos. And it's the same with, like the videos I was talking about earlier. It's like you throw away a bunch of the stuff that you don't need. You overshoot, you over record, and you only want to keep the best stuff. We shot on our trip that we just went on to Tahiti. We shot so much video, man. It was all on GoPro. So much video and just gigs and gigs and gigs of video. And, edit it down to this perfect 3-minute, 40-second reel, cut to a song, all the best shots. We didn't throw away the rest of it because it's like still, footage from a unique place that we want to keep. But like, we probably won't look at those as much. We'll just, that highlight reel is what we want to show to people.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, you just really said that's actually your iTunes workflow too. Coming back to audio, like iTunes is where the final best stuff lives, and I think this is probably a crucial mistake that I from time to time make with iTunes is kind of leaving the half finished stuff in there, and the reason is because I think playlists are a neat way to conceptualize how I'm listening to stuff, like having a drafts playlist of projects I'm working on and having a way. And actually, I'll tell you what, one of the reasons I do it is because we have reached a point is with iTunes now where we can sync it. Like it used to be called iTunes Match, but now they've added Apple Music, which I think the feature is called iCloud Music Library, where you can sync your stuff from Apple Music and your own personal iTunes library across all of your devices. It doesn't work as well as Photos, but it's a really good way. Like what I'll do often.
I think that works pretty well, actually. I use that. The only time I've had trouble with that is if I put album art in that's too high res.
Yeah.
It really doesn't like that. Like there's something that what I do with our album cover that we make, we always make some cool album cover for the kids' album. And like I've got like a big one. It's like a Photoshop file that's like 30-inch by 30-inch at 300 DPI. I have a really high-res version that we make the poster out of. And then, I make the smaller ones for the website and stuff. And like, I think I accidentally put the high-res one in one time. And whenever I reference that on any of my devices, music would crash.
Wow.
Like it would try to download the track and display the album art and it would crash. It was too big of a picture. So I thought that was a strange bug that I found. But that's the only time I've had a problem with it. I mean, like when I got a new MacBook and just logged in and all the stuff was there. It's like, oh, nice. That worked how it was supposed to.
So are you syncing your personal library as well as anything? Do you subscribe to Apple Music?
Yeah.
I should ask you that first. Okay. So, and do you subscribe to any of the other pay a monthly fee and get our music library services?
No. Just Apple Music. I waited until Apple Music to start any of that just because, I don't know, like it hadn't reached the critical point yet when Apple Music came out. If they wouldn't have come out with that, I might have tried something like Spotify, but I tried that and I was like, this is nice. I'm going to keep using this, I guess.
The beta adds some crucial features that Spotify has that it was missing. You can now follow people and playlists. A lot of those sharing features are in the new iOS 11 beta.
I didn't know. I thought you could do that before. Huh.
Yeah. Well, you could share a playlist, but I don't know. It was a little wonkier. It's definitely got a lot more of the social stuff built in. Like when you log into the For You page, you see like what you're. And I have, of course, like 2 friends who are on the beta, but I can see what they've been listening to.
Can see. Oh, yeah. Okay, that's different. Yeah. Well, I mean, I could like, I liked how earlier I could like airdrop a playlist to somebody, and that kind of worked, and then they could update it. And that seemed to work one time that I did that.
Right.
No, I like it though. I mean, it's what I'd really like to see is a DJ app allowed to reference Apple Music tracks. Traktor on the iPad would be the killer app for me.
Yeah, some of those have Spotify integration, but I haven't seen any iCloud Music Library integration.
I know, yeah. I'm already subscribed to one, so I don't do that enough to care. So, but I really liked the Traktor app. I actually DJ'd a wedding off of that one time, and that was a really good app, really good mobile app that was easier to use than the professional one, and did everything I wanted to do. Like that was like the moment where like it was like make or break, and then it just nothing else ever came. So I really saw potential there.
Yeah. No, that's great. Riddle me this. This is one of the frictions. I'm looking through my iTunes library on my phone right now. Here's one of the areas of friction. So a couple years back, iTunes and the Apple Music app started to strongly favor displaying things to you in an album view, meaning like, first of all, it means that you have to have nice album art for all of your stuff, which it sounds like you do because you're a civilized music person.
By the way, I've got about 5 minutes left.
That's fine.
I gotta go.
We've covered everything I want to. Sweet. Yeah. No. So just, I guess here's the friction point. I'm wondering if there's any way for me to avoid this. I do a lot of freestanding songs. Like for example, because the cloud syncing is good enough, I find that like if I'm like, for example, if I'm recording one of my groups at school and I just want to listen to our progress in the car, I find that it's a lot easier to dump that into an iTunes playlist and listen to it on my phone in the car than to put it in some folder and like run it from the Dropbox.
Oh yeah.
So I do this a lot, but then I run into this issue. Like if I, something I from time to time do is if like we're doing a piece in the band, I'll go on YouTube, or I'll go on a website, like the publisher's website, and if they have like the check out this piece recording, I'll download that and I'll put it into my iTunes library. But then I get this problem where all of these individual standalone tracks that don't have any metadata end up in my iTunes library. And because iTunes wants to show me these album views, I end up with tons of these little like unorganized, it's like the white square with the eighth notes in it. And doesn't really, it's just not, like I really miss when iTunes used to almost look like an Excel spreadsheet, which I know that makes me an animal, but.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it goes back to like the honestly, what is this app trying to do? Is it trying to play your personal tracks, or is it trying to play commercial music? I mean, what I've used with students a little bit, like, like with the back and forth, if we make like temp versions of some of our songs we do in EMG, the first version of the remix that we want to perform with, I'll do like a secret SoundCloud set. I know SoundCloud's a whole other discussion, but that has worked pretty well to just like for demo-y kind of stuff like that that's not done, and I want to listen to it on my phone sometimes and be able to access it, but like it's not done, it's not the finished version. I've used that before, and that's makes me feel like I'm using the right tool sometimes.
Yeah, I think so. I think the general gist of my iTunes woes you are correctly summarizing as just better organize the metadata. And I think it really would solve a lot of my problems.
Yeah, well, I mean, iTunes is for stuff that's finished to me. There's no versioning. There's, it'd be nice if they fixed classical music a little bit, but yeah. Well, hey, it's been great talking to you.
Yeah, this has been fun.
Yeah. Good luck editing. I hope you don't have a lot of drift issues.
Yeah. I'll work it out. It's summer.
Awesome. Well, hey, take it easy, man, and we'll keep in touch.
All right, sounds great. This has been fun. Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Bye.